For the last 8 years, a young man named Turan has lived a quiet, isolated life as a humble shepherd in a remote village. He spends his days tending to his flock of sheep in the grassy fields, perfectly content with being entirely ignored by the rest of the world. But beneath his ragged clothes and simple farm life, this guy is hiding a massive, dangerous secret. He is actually a remarkably powerful wizard, naturally capable of commanding fire, wind, and telekinesis with just a mere thought. Years ago, his mother warned him that if the ruling class ever discovered his abilities, he would be dragged into a brutal world of warring noble houses. She made him swear on his life to keep his magic completely hidden, terrified that the corrupt elites would turn him into a disposable weapon. To keep that promise, Torin even lets the local villagers bully and blame him for their problems, fighting back with nothing but a wooden stick so no one suspects a thing. But living in the untamed wilderness comes with a deadly catch, because this world is crawling with terrifying monsters and bloodthirsty evil spirits. These colossal beasts are fueled by dark mana, meaning regular physical weapons and normal attacks are completely useless against them. The only way to actually kill one is by applying the law of causality through a wizard's spells, which makes magic users the most valuable and heavily guarded people on the continent. When a massive panther-like monster starts slaughtering people near Turin's home, the cowardly villagers immediately try to throw him under the bus to save themselves. Desperate to survive the looming threat, the village chief travels all the way to the city and hires a professional monster hunter to clear the woods. This brings a man named Kyrn right to Turan's doorstep, a retired wandering wizard who tracks and hunts deadly beasts for a living. Now our hero is stuck between a rock and a hard place as the monster closes in on his home. If he steps in to fight the beast using his true power, he breaks the solemn promise he made to his dying mother and risks being enslaved by the nobles forever. But if he does nothing and keeps playing the fool, the only home he has ever known is going to be ripped to shreds in a matter of days. Down in the village, kids play a game where a brave wizard fights a terrible monster. The boy playing the wizard whacks his friend, claiming that monsters always lose to magic. Elder Labus watches them argue and chuckles at their innocent dreams. When the boy eagerly asks how to learn spells, the elder breaks his heart. He explains that true magic is hereditary, locked away by the elite nobles who rule society. The peaceful morning shatters when a younger man asks the elder about terrifying new rumors. A villager spotted a massive, building-sized shadow panther lurking right by the entrance last night. The chief has rushed to hire a wizard, and the children are warned to stay inside. The young man asks the elder if they managed to warn absolutely everyone in the valley. He is specifically worried about a lonely shepherd named Turan living out in the hills. Up in those pastures, our hero Turan is busy taking a nap surrounded by his flock. He complains that this boring life is rotting his brain, right before someone angrily wakes him. Elder Labus scolds our hero for sleeping the day away. The old man asks if Turan is still holding a grudge over his stolen sheep. Turan bluntly refuses to share his mother's inheritance and tells the elder to get lost, but Labus reveals a giant panther monster is currently roaming the hills. He warns Turan that he's the perfect first target. Though the chief already summoned a wizard, Labus claims he came out of concern, but Turan knows he only cares about the flock. Our hero tells the old man to hurry home before his foul breath ruins the air. Left alone, Turan thinks about these beasts and their mysterious mana. He doubts any wizard visiting their tiny village is actually strong, but he's still curious. Suddenly, a sharp scent catches his attention. It's the unmistakable smell of fresh blood, and he tracks it straight into the woods. He steps deeper into the shadows until he finally spots the source. Turan finds Elder Labus's brutally dismembered body lying in the dirt. He immediately realizes no ordinary wild animal could have inflicted such gruesome wounds. Suddenly, the ground shakes as a colossal glowing claw stomps into the clearing. The giant shadow panther has finally revealed itself. Turan remembers his father claiming that only a powerful wizard could slay these beasts. Recalling that wizards can supposedly kill with a single word, Turan locks eyes with the roaring monster. Flashing a sinister smirk, he simply commands the creature to die. But the beast just growls back, and our hero awkwardly admits his trick completely failed. As the massive panther lunges forward, Turan desperately shouts for it to stop. The monster barely flinches, proving that words aren't going to save him today. It unleashes a devastating surge of energy, forcing Turan to leap out of the way. Accepting that magic is off the table, he grabs a heavy stone to do this the hard way. If magic won't work, he'll just have to do what shepherds do best. As the giant panther lunges, Turan loads the heavy rock into his sling. His eyes lock onto the beast, tracking its movements for the perfect opening. Planting his feet, he channels all his strength and whips the weapon forward. The stone rockets through the air, tearing right past the monster's chaotic energy. Refusing to back down, our hero lunges straight into the massive creature's path. Targeting its head, the rock strikes with bone-crushing force and shatters the panther's skull. The beast crashes to the dirt, leaving Turan stunned that his simple sling actually worked. Staring at the bloody carcass, he wonders what to do with the massive body. Wiping the blood away, he realizes he just did those ungrateful villagers a huge favor. Because the truth is, Turan is a wizard. He first discovered his gifts 8 years ago when he was just 10. He eagerly showed off his magic, but his mother dropped her cane in absolute terror. She pulled him close and begged him to never use his powers again. She made the young boy swear to hide his magic from everyone. He didn't understand why, until she reminded him about nobles and knights. While pure-blooded nobles rule everything, mixed-blood knights are treated like absolute slaves. Since he inherited his abilities from his knight father, discovery means a life of servitude. So he promised his mother he would keep his identity completely hidden. 8 years later, our hero is still honoring that vow. He has zero intention of ever revealing his secret or leaving these mountains. The banging turns into angry shouts, so Turan finally steps outside. He finds a mob of furious village men waiting for him. They grab him immediately, screaming that he killed Elder Labus. They even accuse him of feeding the old man to the monster. But Turan calmly flips the script on them. He says they were too cowardly to fight, so they need a scapegoat for their guilt. Enraged by the truth, the mob snaps and lunges at him. But Turan has a serious advantage. He casually channels a tiny bit of mana to make his attackers trip. It isn't flashy, but practical magic gets the job done. Grabbing a wooden stick, he uses just enough power to subdue them. He brutally beats the mob down without dealing any lethal blows. This precise control is exactly how he's hidden his wizard identity for 8 long years. Standing over the groaning men, he tells them to help with the elder's funeral instead. He turns to the nearby women who nervously stutter that they just wanted to see him. Our hero coldly tells the women to get out of his sight and heads back inside his cabin. He figures the village will try to cheat him on trades now, but he's perfectly willing to thrash them again. Before he can even relax, a violent banging erupts at his front door. Annoyed that the mob hasn't had enough, he throws it open, only to find an armed stranger. The weary traveler apologizes for intruding, while Turan awkwardly tries to remember his polite manners. Right on cue, the old man's stomach lets out a massive, echoing growl. Turan invites him in for a hearty meal, and the traveler is shocked to hear he's never left the village. He sharply observes the young shepherd, noting his surprisingly excellent table manners for a country boy. The man praises Turan's late mother for raising him so well, respectfully praying for her soul. Turan humbly thanks him, then asks what brings a warrior so far out into the sticks. The stranger reveals he was hired to hunt the giant shadow panther, completely unaware that Turan already killed it. Turan immediately pieces it together. This stranger is the wizard the village elder hired from the city. The guest admits he senses monster energy nearby, yet finds Turan's calm demeanor incredibly suspicious. He presses our hero, asking how a mere shepherd can sit there eating without a shred of fear. Hearing this interrogation, Turan remembers a stern warning from his late mother. She warned that the corrupt nobles of the outside world treat their subordinates like disposable dogs. They might act like family at first, only to sell him off the moment it benefits them. To avoid being exploited by other magic users, he had to keep his powers an absolute secret. Back in the present, Turan stares coldly at his guest from the shadows. He realizes that protecting his peaceful life might require silencing this investigator permanently. The wizard demands an answer, completely unaware of the deadly aura filling the room. Suddenly feeling that killing intent, the hunter breaks into a terrified sweat and retracts his question. He nervously laughs it off as a joke, leaving Turan slightly confused. The wizard admits Turan caught him off guard and apologizes for his little test. He extends a hand, finally introducing himself as Cairn the Wanderer, and Turan shakes it. Over a meal, the 75-year-old wizard explains that magic slows down aging. Cairn reveals he spent 60 years serving House Arabion before retiring to wander the world. But as Cairn smirks, Turan realizes something exhausting. It takes a massive toll to keep up polite conversation with a man who secretly wishes him harm. They end up talking through the entire night until the sun comes up. Cairn pays for his meal with a pure silver coin, and Turan smoothly wishes him luck. As the wizard leaves, he clenches his fist, clearly still suspicious of our hero. Later that day, Turan returns to the peaceful, grassy hills to act like a normal shepherd. But dropping his innocent act, he flashes a sinister smile. Using his hidden magic, he commands his entire flock of sheep to gather around him. As he pets his flock, Turan admits he's never felt so comfortable talking to another wizard. Cairn's genuine kindness completely shatters his old belief that knights were just mindless hounds serving arrogant nobles. But as he walks through the fields, our hero worries about how to break the news. Deep in the misty forest, Chiron is already tracking his target. He finds the area completely empty and realizes the monster has already been slain. He wonders if another wizard took the job, but he's just glad the threat is gone. Suddenly, a chilling presence freezes him in his tracks. A massive glowing claw erupts from the shadows. The beast hasn't just survived, it has mutated into a terrifying, multi-mouthed abomination. Chiron barely dodges a lethal slam from the creature, instantly recognizing what happened. When a monster dies, its remaining mana must be absorbed, or the carcass becomes an evil spirit. He leaps into the air, stunned that any competent wizard would leave a corpse to rot. He wonders if the killer was just clueless, or if they actually wanted this nightmare to spawn. But it doesn't matter now. Chiron summons a crackling blade of lightning, ready to finish the job. Chiron unleashes a devastating blast of golden lightning directly at the creature. But to his absolute shock, the monster completely nullifies his attack. The spirit vanishes into the mist, forcing Chiron to frantically search. Before he can react, dark liquid bubbles at his feet. The beast strikes from the shadows with a violent slash. Chiron is brutally impaled, realizing it would take at least a low-ranking noble to survive this. Gasping for breath, the veteran hunter can't believe he found such a monster here. Accepting his fate, Chiron channels every last drop of his mana. He prepares one final desperate strike against the monster. As the monstrous spirit lunges in for the kill, they violently clash. But suddenly, a blinding flash of blue energy rips through the battlefield. The colossal evil spirit instantly crashes to the ground, completely obliterated. Chiron looks up in utter disbelief. Stepping out of the forest with his magic glowing is Taran. The stunned hunter realizes the shepherd is a wizard, and Taran calmly confirms it. Still reeling from the reveal, Chiron asks why the young man bothered to help him. He points out that someone with his power could have easily looked the other way. Taran could be making fortunes elsewhere instead of risking his neck for a remote village. But the shepherd just chuckles, explaining that he pities the terrified, unprotected villagers. He believes wizards are blessed with divine power specifically to protect the helpless. Even if others disagree, he stands by his own choices. As the dust settles from the explosion, Chiron remembers his own desperate warning. He had been absolutely certain this monster spirit was way beyond their level. He had prepared for a grim death, convinced only noble blood could slay it. But Taran had completely flipped the script. His overwhelming magic proved he was far stronger than any ordinary knight. Staring at the swirling blue energy, a chilling realization hits the veteran hunter. This shepherd is a wizard with enough power to bring the entire world to its knees. As the monstrous entity charges, Taran just grins, finally getting a chance to test his limits. But Chiron warns the shepherd that he isn't strong enough to face this alone. Suddenly, a massive surge of blue energy blasts through the forest. Realizing he would only get in the way, the hunter decides to help awaken the boy's powers instead. Taran lunges forward, unleashing a devastating physical strike. But Chiron desperately yells that physical attacks are completely useless against an evil spirit. He orders the shepherd to use fire or lightning. The monster erupts with dark energy, and Taran admits his attack failed. Chiron frantically explains that a wizard must apply the law of causality to inflict spell damage. Then, a horrifying realization hits the hunter. As debris flies from a massive explosion, Chiron realizes Taran has never even absorbed mana before. The kid doesn't know the most basic rules of magic. Taran casually summons a swirling vortex of fire, a technique that normally requires extensive training. To Chiron's absolute shock, the shepherd already has the raging flames perfectly under control. Engulfed in intense fire, Taran steps forward with blinding speed. The monstrous spirit shrieks as it tries to fight back through the inferno. But Taran doesn't give the creature a single second to breathe. He unleashes a relentless barrage of raw, burning magic. Chiron yells out that he has to reduce the evil spirit completely to ash. With a terrifying glare, our hero pushes his fiery limits. The flames violently consume the monster entirely. It screams as its body is incinerated from the inside out. The forest lights up with one final, blinding explosion. As the smoke clears, Chiron is left absolutely speechless. A mere mountain shepherd just obliterated a monster, so Chiron orders him to absorb its mana. Since Taran has no idea how, the wizard tells him to just imagine draining it. Instantly, a massive surge of green energy rips out of the remains. The raw power violently flows straight into the shepherd's body. As the crackling energy fades, Chiron asks how the sudden rush feels. Taran smiles, admitting that the overwhelming sensation is incredible. Watching him, Chiron realizes a terrifying truth about this boy. Wizards normally need years of absorbing enemies to grow strong, but Taran has never done either. To wield this much destructive magic without any prior absorption means his potential is limitless. Chiron stares at the young shepherd, knowing he just found a literal monster. Tauren points out that Chiron is bleeding, but the wizard just bows in absolute reverence. Chiron formally apologizes for troubling a man of such noble lineage. Tauren sighs, swearing he is just a fatherless shepherd and begging Chiron to stop glaring. The hunter asks why someone with godlike strength is wasting his life tending sheep. Tauren admits his mother always warned him to hide his abilities from the world. Hearing this, Chiron nods and admits the boy's mother was incredibly wise. He brings up the brutal war between the great noble houses 2 decades ago. Out of 3,000 Arabian knights, over 900 were mercilessly slaughtered. Chiron reveals that House Jahar massacred his entire group, leaving him as the sole survivor. That terrifying bloodbath is exactly why staying hidden was the safest choice. But Chiron points out the insane reality of their current situation. A seasoned veteran failed to scratch that evil spirit, while the untrained shepherd completely erased it. Looking away, Tauren wonders if his mother lied about his father being a knight. Chiron insists that mankind needs true knights now more than ever. Eons after the gods stripped demihumans of their power, those monsters are plotting their return. Because of that, the world desperately needs a strong, righteous noble like Tauren. Chiron knows the young shepherd's potential is completely wasted here. He tells Tauren that with his raw strength, the world is his for the taking. Whether he wants riches, honor, or absolute power, or just love and friendship, he can have it all. Or, Chiron suggests, he could join him as a wandering monster slayer. He insists that any of those paths would be far more meaningful than spending his entire life just tending sheep in a field. Tauren looks out at the horizon, taking in the weight of the offer, but Chiron admits he has one major concern about pushing the boy. He worries that the harsh reality of the outside world might not live up to Tauren's grand expectations. Still, Chiron mentions a certain group of people roaming the lands. Though quite common, they play a crucial role in keeping the peace. Intrigued by the idea of the outside world, Tauren immediately asks the wizard to tell him more. Chiron explains that surviving out there requires one specific trait: pure, unyielding grit. He introduces these men as trackers, hunters of the supernatural. But then Chiron drops a heavy revelation. Tauren's powers are terrifyingly similar to the noble house they once went to war with. The revelation hits him like a nightmare of blood and rain. Chiron confirms the boy's absolute worst fear. He is a direct descendant of the great house Jahar. Tauren is completely stunned that the blood of Chiron's sworn enemies runs through his own veins. But the older wizard doesn't draw his weapon. Instead, he stays perfectly calm. He knows the boy is just a shepherd who had nothing to do with the war. Chiron tells him not to carry the guilt of his ancestors. Answering blood with blood will only create an endless cycle of revenge. He warns that pursuing real power will inevitably pull Tauren back into House Jahar. But Chiron has faith in the boy's character. He believes that if someone with Tauren's good heart rises through Jahar's ranks, everything could change. The heavy burden of his lineage settles over the young shepherd, but after a moment of silence his choice is made. With a confident smile, Tauren declares he wants to see what lies beyond the mountains. The mentor and his new apprentice finally set out together. They leave the quiet life of the pastures behind for good. Later, settling into a new room, the real training begins. Tauren eagerly asks how a wizard knows if their mana is suitable for magic. Chiron explains that mastering any spell always comes down to 3 crucial factors. Chiron explains that the first factor is bloodline, dictating the type of power a wizard inherits. This rule mostly applies to the noble houses, giving them a massive head start. Tauren asks about the second factor, which Chiron calls aptitude. Aptitude determines how easily a wizard can bend mana for specific tasks. He points out that Tauren's earlier fireballs were devastating because of his raw, unconventional talent. Without that knack, a normal wizard's spell would just bounce harmlessly off a target. Finally, Chiron explains the third factor is plausibility. Tauren quickly connects the dots. He realizes he can't just will an enemy to die with raw mana. He has to actually conjure a fireball and aim it, which Chiron happily confirms. The veteran praises his student's sharp mind as a sheep bleats outside. Their conversation immediately shifts to Tauren's specific lineage. House Jahar has always excelled in stealth and tracking. Chiron tells the boy to give it a whirl right now. Tauren closes his eyes and focuses entirely on remaining unseen. Instantly, his eye flashes with swirling light as the mana responds. A crescent shadow falls across the floor, perfectly cloaking his presence. The spell works flawlessly on the very first try. But watching him, Chiron breaks into a cold sweat. He is still completely terrified by the Jahar bloodline's monstrous potential. Despite his lingering fear, Chiron knows he cannot leave this raw talent unchecked. He approaches the young boy with a final decision. He tells Tauren to pack his things because they are leaving the mountain today. This sudden declaration catches the attention of Tauren's employer nearby. The mustached man is completely shocked, frantically asking who will take care of his flock. But Chiron just sighs and tells him to find someone else to tend to the sheep. With his old boss dismissed, Tarn prepares to leave his simple life behind. The two of them set off together into the vast, unknown world. As they trek across the rugged wilderness, Karen continues to mentor the boy. Toran absorbs every piece of magical knowledge like a sponge. Days turn into weeks as they walk further from the only home Turan has ever known. Yet for the first time in his life, the young shepherd doesn't feel alone. Karen constantly watches his back, guiding him safely through the harsh roads. They share quiet meals by the campfire and sleep under the open sky. Slowly, the hardened wizard begins to soften around his earnest new apprentice. And as Turan watches his mentor lead the way, a profound realization hits him. He belatedly understands just how much he has always longed for a strong father figure. Growing up as a lonely farmhand, he never had someone to truly look up to. But looking at Chiron now, Tyron finally sees the exact man he needs to become. As Chiron and Torin continue their journey, they cross paths with a group of hooded travelers. The strangers seem friendly enough at first glance. They strike up a casual conversation on the dusty trail. But something about the men immediately puts our heroes on edge. The travelers point back down the remote path. They explain the rough route ahead. They offer directions through the desolate wilderness. The leader hopefully points out that the city of Moray lies just back the way they came. Torin acknowledges the advice and prepares to move on, but the leader suddenly blocks their way, asking if they really plan to leave empty-handed after getting such valuable information. Turan pauses in total confusion. The atmosphere instantly shifts from helpful to hostile. Turan bluntly asks if these men are just common thieves working a side job. The one-eyed bandit draws his sword, bragging that this isolated spot is perfect for hiding dead bodies. He demands all their gear, taunting that it will be a hassle to pry it off their bloody corpses. Turan simply stares back, finally understanding the situation. Instead of panicking, the young shepherd steps calmly forward. He casually announces that these bandits will make perfect practice targets for his magic. The thugs brace their weapons for a fight. They burst into arrogant laughter at the boy's threat, but Torin slams his hand down, instantly channeling a fierce burst of wind magic into the earth. The massive gale violently launches the screaming bandits into the air. Watching them fly, Torin calmly notes that building up a small breeze saves far more mana than forcing a sudden storm. The bandits groan in pain, completely floored by the massive blast. Torin doesn't give them a single second to recover. He darts through the dust cloud, catching one of the thieves completely off guard. He ruthlessly stabs the man with condensed blue energy. As he fights, he realizes this water-sco would be even deadlier near a river. Another bandit begs for his life, offering everything he owns. But Turan just stomps him into the dirt without hesitation. He moves through the chaotic battlefield like a seasoned killer. Our hero effortlessly dismantles the remaining thieves one by one. Finally, the last surviving bandit drops to his knees and offers to answer any question. Torin calmly asks why they would randomly attack a lone traveler who might be a wizard. The terrified thief admits that because Turan bowed politely, they assumed he was just a helpless peasant. Turan thanks him for the insight as the man desperately begs to be spared, but Turin remembers Chiron's golden rule for surviving the road. Never show kindness to thieves who would gladly kill others for profit. With a swift and brutal strike, he finishes the last bandit off. Chiron watches the bloody aftermath, casually noting that the cleanup took longer than expected. As Turin treks alone across the vast desert, the brutal reality of his first murder burns in his mind. He feels a heavy pang of guilt over the execution. But as he pictures the bandits slaughtering innocent people, Chiron's harsh lessons echo in his head. Realizing some weeds just need to be pulled, the young mage's restless mind finally settles. Soon the wasteland gives way to a sprawling new world, and our hero freezes in absolute awe. He has officially arrived in the grand city of Moray, completely overwhelmed by the massive crowds. Navigating the bustling, noisy marketplace is a total culture shock for the mountain shepherd. He stops to admire a stall only to get chased off by a grumpy fruit merchant. Turan politely apologizes for not being a customer, but he quickly realizes that money talks louder than manners in the big city. He digs into his pockets to buy the angry merchant's cooperation. Pulling out 2 ducat coins, he easily flips the man's attitude. Tossing over the cash, he demands directions to the nearest inn. He tracks down the biggest pub in town and steps inside to secure a room. A cheerful blonde clerk warmly welcomes him and rings up his total. Taryn hands over 16 ducats for his stay, but immediately asks her for intel on local monsters. The innkeeper pockets his coin with a smirk. She reminds the young shepherd that information isn't free in this city. Realizing he's a clueless country boy, she points him towards City Hall. She explains that the city lord's officials handle all public affairs and bounties there. She then asks if he's a monster hunter himself. Taran has no idea what she means, so she mentions an old wives' tale. Before he can answer, a veteran named Medan interrupts to defend the legend. He insists that slaying monsters really can turn an ordinary person into a wizard. The hunter loudly declares that he refuses to die before unlocking magic. His rowdy crew cheers in agreement, desperate for a chance at real power. The tavern erupts as the men dream of leaving their ordinary lives behind. Having overheard the conversation, Medan eagerly approaches Taran. He offers to let the newcomer join their established hunting party, but the veteran's sly smile immediately sets off our hero's alarm bells. Knowing he doesn't need a team, Taran flatly rejects the offer and retreats upstairs. Exhausted, he summons his blue Jahar magic, wondering what this new life will bring. But his rest is cut short when a sudden knock echoes at his door. Taran isn't taking any chances. He prepares for an ambush. Channeling his magic, he grabs the door handle. But when he yanks it open, he freezes in complete shock. Someone in the hallway is searching for a woman named Lena. There are no assassins waiting for him. Instead, a blonde woman stands at his door. She flashes a coy smile and playfully questions his intentions. Taran is completely caught off guard. The tension instantly evaporates. But then a loud gong suddenly echoes through the building. It is immediately followed by a man's enraged, agonizing scream. Taran instantly remembers Chiron's stern warning. His mentor told him to never trust in-workers. The flustered woman quickly turns and hurries down the stairs. Left alone, he reflects on the strange encounters from the fruit vendor to Lena. Meanwhile, Medan's hunting party heads upstairs, openly mocking Taran. They think the young shepherd is completely useless. Midian chuckles, claiming the kid would survive longer under his wing. But his sly smirk reveals his true manipulative intentions. Unaware of the target on his back, Taran finally rests. The next morning, Taran heads straight to the local guild to take on his first official hunt. The clerk greets him, but quickly shifts into a stern lecture about the harsh realities of the trade. He warns the young shepherd that dealing with monster remains isn't a simple game of fetch. Handing over a strange core, the official explains that hunters must deliver exactly what the city demands. If a beast's mana isn't properly absorbed by a wizard, the corpse will mutate into a violent evil spirit. Because of this deadly risk, mishandling a monster hunt is a severe crime. He warns the kid that failing to comply carries a brutal death penalty by hanging. He adds that the city guards are strictly confined to protecting the walls. Anyone who steps outside to slay beasts is entirely on their own. As Taran walks out with his assignment, the clerk sighs, fully expecting the boy to be dead by nightfall. Deep in the dark wilderness, a glowing, monstrous eye snaps open to ambush its prey. But just hours later, the guild hall erupts in absolute disbelief. A dead, bird-like beast is slammed onto the counter, leaving the veteran hunters completely speechless. When asked who helped him kill it so fast, the hooded boy coldly replies that he hunted it alone. He casually demands his reward while the entire room stares at him in shock. The men crowd around the carcass, completely mind-blown that its valuable razor wings are still perfectly intact. Bringing a monster back in such a pristine state is practically unheard of for a rookie. Watching from the shadows, Medan realizes his twisted plan to use the young shepherd just got a lot more complicated. Back at the inn, Lena greets Taran with a knowing smile, noting he is the talk of the town. Taran ignores the gossip and focuses entirely on devouring a massive feast. But beneath his calm exterior, he is secretly calculating his next move. His original plan was simply to hunt for basic monster mana. However, he realizes that absorbing energy from weak beasts will never be enough to truly grow stronger. He needs far bigger prey if he wants to survive. The innkeeper happily praises his massive appetite as he clears his plates. Taran politely thanks them for the food and prepares to head out. Suddenly, a rough hand yanks him backward by his clothes. 3 local thugs surround him, mocking him as a bony little rat who got too lucky. Before they can finish their threat, Taran instantly retaliates and sends one staggering. Enraged, the remaining thugs snap and lunge at him with a vicious strike, but our hero doesn't even flinch as he unleashes a devastating counterpunch. He brutally dismantles the thugs right in the middle of the tavern. The sheer speed of his blows leaves the attackers completely helpless. He drops them to the floor in seconds, proving he is entirely out of their league. The entire room falls dead silent in shock at the absolute beatdown. Someone screams for the fighting to stop, but Lena just watches from the sidelines, bursting into manic laughter. After the tavern brawl settles, a few men gather in a dim room, bowing in apology and vowing to keep things under control. One of them, wearing a bandana, admits that times are tough and they are completely strapped for cash. He claims their financial trouble isn't Taran's concern, but our hero slides something over, leaving the man confused. Taran makes it clear this isn't a handout, demanding valuable information in return. He needs a solid lead on where to hunt next so he can farm enough mana to grow stronger. With the insight finally secured, the young shepherd decides it is time to hit the road. Watching him leave, the blonde broker smiles, noting that Turin might not be as experienced as Karen just yet. But the sheer intensity in the kid's eyes proves his unwavering resolve. Turan travels far toward his next destination, expecting a routine monster hunt. However, when he finally tracks down the veteran hunter Midan, the scene is an absolute nightmare. He finds scattered coins and a severed, bloody hand resting on a blood-soaked surface. Horrified by the carnage, Turan looks up and desperately asks Midden what in the world just happened. Still in shock, Turan demands answers. He asks Midden what could have possibly caused this bloodbath. The veteran hunter stands completely frozen in fear. The tension in the air becomes absolutely suffocating. Suddenly, a shadowy creature rises from the corpses. The monstrous beast looms over its recent victims. It drips with the fresh blood of the fallen. Without warning, the monster violently lashes out. With glowing red eyes, it lunges forward. Shocked by its incredible speed, Turan barely leaps away. He realizes that any hesitation here means death. Refusing to be its next meal, he unleashes his magic. A massive glowing arc of blue energy rips through the trees. The violent blast smashes right into the furry monster. A deafening crack echoes through the dense woods. Debris flies everywhere from the sheer force of the impact. The terrifying creature takes the full brunt of the blow. Dust and smoke completely obscure the bloody clearing. Following up, Turan draws his blade and strikes. He targets the giant red-eyed rabbit while it's distracted. The young shepherd perfectly times his swift counterattack. Pushing his Jahar magic to its absolute limits, he bursts forward. Moving with blinding speed, he prepares to finish this fight. With a brutal, decisive strike, Turan completely obliterates the mutated beast. The monster collapses into a lifeless heap on the forest floor. Breathing heavily, our hero slowly turns his attention back to his real target. Midian watches in absolute terror as the young shepherd approaches. The veteran hunter finally realizes he severely underestimated the boy's Jahar magic. Turan closes the distance, his glowing blade still dripping with fresh blood. He easily disarms the older man, forcing him to his knees. Midian scrambles backward, desperately trying to find a way out of this nightmare. But Turan corners the traitor, his eyes burning with unforgiving rage. He points his weapon right at Midan's throat, demanding answers for the massacre. Asking for his final words, Turan watches the bloody, broken man cry that he has no family left. Without a shred of hesitation, Turan delivers the killing blow. The threat is finally eliminated, leaving the forest eerily silent. Later on, Turan regroups with Cairn, who is absolutely stunned to hear about the thousands of monsters. Sitting at a tavern table, the blonde hunter mentions a restricted area, and Turan immediately asks how to enter. Listening to the explanation, Turan quickly deduces that Cairn must actually be a wizard. Cairn doesn't deny it, quietly confirming the young shepherd's sharp instincts. With his new goal locked in, Turan declares that his next destination will be Orem. Leaving the misty woods behind, he offers a brief, cold wish for Midden to rest in peace. Leaving the forest behind, Turan and Cairn make the long journey toward the city of Orem. They trek across sprawling landscapes until the massive city walls finally come into view. But as they approach the gates, Turan is stunned by the sheer size of the crowd. Hundreds of people are lined up waiting for entry. He realizes that major cities operate with much stricter organization than the rural villages. Suddenly, a guard calls out and orders our hero to freeze. The man points out Turan's filthy clothes and demands he go dust himself off first. After cleaning up and passing through the gates, Turan navigates the sprawling stone streets. He eventually arrives at the grand library that Midden had told him about. He asks for entry, but the guards block his path, declaring the library is strictly for wizards. Turan casually mentions that he actually is one, causing the guards to scoff in disbelief. One angry guard steps up, threatening to make him pay dearly for impersonating a mage. But in this world, wizards can instantly sense each other's strength through mana detection. Turan's eyes narrow as he decides to stop talking and start showing. A massive, throbbing surge of red Jahar energy erupts straight from his hand. The overwhelming pressure drops the guards to their knees, leaving them gasping in absolute terror. The guards are completely stunned, assuming someone with this much power must be a high-ranking noble. Kenner demands his lineage for a formal inquiry, but Turan bluntly refuses to answer. Reluctantly accepting their sudden hospitality, our hero ends up soaking in a luxurious, petal-filled bath. He tries to wash himself, but the terrified maids insist they will be severely punished otherwise. The staff gasp in pure shock when he emerges wearing stunning white and gold ceremonial robes. As he steps into the grand hall, he catches the eye of a pink-haired noblewoman. She asks her maid Azella if this is truly the man who arrived looking like a beggar. She presses him about his family origins, but Turan claims his circumstances prevent him from answering. Smirking at his secrecy, the noblewoman decides to play a little trick on him. Unleashing a massive wave of golden energy, she demands to see his true power. The sheer force of her aura sent shockwaves through the entire room, but Turin stands his ground as their magical energies violently clash. Nightkenner lunges forward to intervene against the overwhelming pressure. Sighing in disappointment, the noblewoman lets her aura fade. With a creepy smirk, she prepares to push him even further, but Turin completely flips the script and asks if she wants to get married. Caught entirely off guard by his bluntness, she just stares at him. He casually tells her to at least think about his offer. As she walks away, Turin watches her closely. He realizes her mana reserves are just as massive as his own. Glancing around, he wonders if everyone in this city is this ridiculously strong. He needs to be careful if this is the average power level here. Later, Turin is escorted into an opulent office to meet the Lord. The man behind the desk welcomes him warmly and asks for his true identity. Turin admits he just wants access to the estate's library. Lord Baltus assumes our hero is hunting for ancient skills or secret mana hacks, but he warns Turin that no such shortcuts exist here. Still, confident there are no family secrets to steal, the Lord tells him to return tomorrow. The next morning, Turin heads straight for the Sky Library. Stepping inside, he takes in the sheer scale of the ancient architecture. He climbs a massive, dimly lit staircase to reach the main floor. At the top, he stares in awe at the endless rows of towering bookshelves. Suddenly, a young woman in white formal wear greets him by name. She explains that Lord Baltus ordered her to guide him through the rules. Turin can't help but notice she seems a bit too young to be a librarian. She hovers entirely too close, so he politely asks her to step back. But she refuses, playfully offering him romance, history, or something a little more exotic. Flipping the script, Turin completely ignores her flirting and asks to learn the basic ways of the world. Confused, she drops a massive stack of centuries-old texts on his desk. Having lived as a mountain shepherd, Turin marvels at the strange objects. He opens the ancient, rune-filled pages and dives into his very first book. For the next few days, Turin devours every ancient text he can get his hands on. He quickly absorbs the world's geography, the rules of magic, and the truth about demihumans. For the first time in his life, the mysteries of this world finally make sense. But knowledge isn't free, and Lord Baltus soon summons him to collect his payment. A monster has blocked the city's vital northern trade route for 10 straight days. It already devoured 4 knights, so the Lord wants a powerful wizard to guarantee their safety. Turin smirks, finally realizing this exact crisis is why he was granted library access so easily. He heads out to join the expedition team, where the pink-haired noblewoman is already waiting. Her maid Azella complains that her master is blowing the situation way out of proportion. She thinks dragging their guest along is an insult to their own knight's strength. But the pink-haired noblewoman quickly scolds Azella for speaking poorly of her father, Lord Baltus. With the noble daughter's true identity revealed, Turin steps up and formally greets Knight Kenner. Kenner tries to cut the tension by jokingly asking if Turin is interested in his sister. The expedition pushes into the dark woods and suddenly halts at a destroyed cart. Examining the wreckage, Kenner realizes the travelers were ambushed coming from the north. They spot a massive, cracked handprint on the wood, identifying the monster as a giant ape. The group frantically tries to figure out where the beast went next. But the pink-haired noblewoman admits she doesn't know tracking magic, and the knights are clueless. Stepping up, Turin focuses his Jahar magic on a torn piece of cloth. His eyes snap open the second he locks onto a lingering magical trail. Following the invisible scent, he leads the heavily armed squad deeper into the mist. He points them straight to a rushing forest stream where the trail suddenly vanishes. The noblewoman is stunned that a mere beast would wash itself to hide its tracks. Before they can process this eerie intelligence, Turin flinches as a massive shadow falls. With an ear-piercing shriek, the giant ape drops from the canopy and stomps the ground. The massive monster wastes no time and immediately lunges right at our hero. Knight Kenner screams a desperate warning as the giant ape crashes into their ranks. The monster viciously tears through the soldiers, turning the forest into an absolute bloodbath. Panic sweeps through the expedition as the beast violently thrashes its way forward. The pink-haired noblewoman tries to fight back, but the creature's sheer force scatters her men. It darts through the shadows with terrifying speed, crushing anyone who gets in its way. The soldiers shout in frustration, unable to even track its movements. The noblewoman watches in shock as the beast easily evades their attacks. It lets out a deafening roar, completely overwhelming the hunting party. They quickly realize the monster is too fast and is trying to escape. If they lose it in these dense woods, they'll never track it down again. But Turin calmly steps up, ready to unleash his magic and stop the beast himself. As the noblewoman rushes forward, our hero prepares to end this hunt. But the giant ape unleashes a deafening roar, tearing through the vanguard. Seeing the beast rampage, Turin taps into his immense Jahar magic. The sudden surge of energy catches the pink-haired noblewoman completely off guard. With a swift motion, Torin conjures a massive circle of pure energy. He launches the spell directly at the charging monster. The sheer force of the blast sends the heavy creature flying into the dirt. Refusing to back down, the noblewoman screams for the beast to die. She thrusts her hand forward, unleashing a devastating vortex of fire. The roaring flames swallow the monster whole. A massive explosion rocks the entire forest. As the smoke clears, the terrifying ape is finally defeated. The surviving expedition members collapse in absolute exhaustion. Torin just brushes himself off like it was nothing. The noblewoman walks over, joking that at least she didn't scream like a little girl. Torin just laughs it off, flashing her a confident smile. Nearby, the battered soldiers desperately beg for bandages to wrap their broken limbs. Knight Kenner surveys the bloody mess, relieved that they somehow avoided any casualties. Still, he admits that they were completely unprepared for an ambush of that scale. Torin casts a knowing glance, realizing just how lucky these knights really were. Meanwhile, the maid Azella gets scolded for not using her mana to boost her physical strength. Just as the group starts to relax, Torin suddenly turns his head. He senses something else moving deep within the misty woods. Without a word, he signals the battered expedition to keep moving. Their deadly hunt is far from over. Checking his glowing green mana, Torin realizes the library book was right, his power doesn't weaken. As the expedition pushes deeper into the misty woods, the mood finally shifts. The battered soldiers are still limping from their brutal fight with the giant ape, but they know exactly who saved their lives. Knight Kenner approaches our hero with newfound respect. He admits the team would be dead without Torin's tracking skills and that decisive final shot. The pink-haired noblewoman is still stunned by his tactical genius. Torin simply explains that a monster's appearance dictates its awakened abilities. It is a crucial rule for surviving the wild. He reveals he memorized all of this from a monster encyclopedia back at the estate. The noblewoman admits she always gave up on those heavy books as a kid. She is genuinely amazed that someone so capable was hiding right under their noses. Torin just stares out at the sunset, his expression unreadable. He thinks back to the dark-haired guide who pointed him to those very books. Meanwhile, miles away from the deadly forest, the grand library of House Baltas sits quiet. Shadows stretch across the endless rows of ancient knowledge. Suddenly, the young librarian gasps at a shift in the air, flashing a knowing grin. It seems she knows exactly what her favorite reader is accomplishing out there, and she is absolutely loving the show. But she isn't just watching from afar. She reveals her magical sight extends everywhere. When Torin asks for her name, she admits she doesn't actually have one, so our hero simply settles on calling her Ms. Librarian. Through their unique connection, she projects her avatar straight to him. She hovers around him like a phantom guide. Torin is still getting used to having a magical entity in his head. He tries to figure out the limits of her strange projection, but she remains as mysterious as the ancient book she guards. The two share a quiet moment while the expedition rests. Curious, Torin reaches out to test if she's actually tangible. He ends up touching her spectral form. She immediately tells him to stop because it feels incredibly weird. She admits she would help him more directly if she had the power. But for now, she is bound to this phantom state. She leans in close and teases that since only he can see her, it's quite romantic. Torin is completely caught off guard by the sudden flirting. However, she quickly drops the playful act to focus on his magic. She boldly asks for his consent to look deep inside his body. She needs to inspect his rapidly growing Jahar pathways for herself. As she begins her examination, an invisible wave of energy washes over Torin. He lets out a sudden gasp as the intense scan pierces right through him. The sensation of her magic probing his inner pathways is completely overwhelming. But suddenly the librarian pauses in mild surprise. Looking deep into his mana structure, she realizes something shocking. She reveals that his bloodline is actually mixed. Torin is stunned by the news of his own strange heritage. This explains why his Jahar magic behaves so wildly compared to normal humans. The librarian continues analyzing the chaotic, massive flow of his power. She warns him that this mixed nature makes his potential incredibly dangerous. If he doesn't learn to control it soon, it might tear him apart. Torin absorbs the heavy warning, realizing how much he still has to learn. The young shepherd silently vows to master this terrifying gift. Meanwhile, far away in a grand study, a silver-haired man sits in quiet contemplation. He reaches for a red apple on his desk, but it instantly shrivels and crumbles to dust. Another figure steps into the dimly lit hall, asking for his thoughts on an incredible discovery. The two men discuss a powerful secret that must be kept hidden at all costs. They agree that this knowledge would become worthless if common wizards ever found out about it. With their sinister pact made, the shadows around them seem to grow even darker. Back in the daylight, Torin prepares to move on. He knows Lord Baltas is directly pushing him to leave. The pink-haired noblewoman screams and begs to go with him as she's dragged away. But the decision is already made. Turan exchanges his final goodbyes and parts ways with his friends. With his path set, our young wizard finally hits the road. Staring out at the horizon, he realizes just how massive the world is, but his goal is crystal clear. He swears to travel all the way to Jahar. It's the only place to uncover the truth about his dangerous magic. Pushing forward, his real motive burns brighter than ever. He and his mentors approach a massive, towering structure. He is finally going to find a lead on his missing parents. It's been 18 long years since they disappeared. That is more than enough time for any normal clues to vanish completely. But Taran isn't about to give up now. His horse neighs loudly as he spurs it forward. Charging down the path, his real journey finally begins. His powerful horse charges forward through the dense forest, snorting loudly as they cover ground. But as he rides deeper into the mist, he suddenly spots something unusual. Two figures are silently observing him from the shadows. He slows down, sensing a strange and dangerous presence nearby. Before he can react, bandaged hands begin to glow with dark purple energy, conjuring mysterious symbols in the black smoke. His horse rears up in sheer panic, neighing loudly at the massive creature blocking her path. Turan struggles to calm the terrified animal while keeping his eyes on the threat. Nearby, the silver-haired man peers through the foliage, wondering if the unconscious person on the ground provoked the dark elves. His eyes widen in absolute shock as he counts the bodies, 21 of them scattered around. He realizes just how brutal the massacre really was. Back on the misty path, Turan stares down his new enemy. He readies his own magic, knowing this won't be an easy fight. The dark energy continues to swirl around the hidden attackers. Turan keeps his guard up, watching every shadow. He drops into a defensive stance, waiting for the first strike. The tension in the air is thick enough to cut with a knife. Suddenly, the unseen enemy makes their move. A projectile is hurled through the air with terrifying speed, leaving a blue trail behind it. Taran barely manages to dodge the incoming attack. He scans the tree line, trying to pinpoint the attacker's location. Slowly, the dark smoke begins to part, and from the shadows, a monstrous golden wolf with glowing red eyes steps forward to claim its prey. A cloaked figure unleashes a wave of golden energy, screaming that they finally found the fiend. Glowing magic swirls around the forest floor. Suddenly, a monstrous green creature lunges from the trees. Our hero braces for the brutal ambush. Dodging the lethal strike, he gathers his own magic. He retaliates instantly, unleashing a devastating blast of fire that rips through the woods. But the dark beasts are completely relentless. They swarm through the thick smoke, looking for an opening. The massive golden wolf charges forward with terrifying speed. It sinks its teeth right into an arm, spraying blood across the clearing. But the victim refuses to back down, countering with a bone-crushing kick. A heavy impact sends the beast flying back. Dust settles as the monsters reel from the massive blow. From the shadows, another threat reveals itself. A purple, shark-toothed creature steps out, cackling with absolute glee. It mocks its prey, claiming this is payback for killing one of its own and swearing to make them beg. But before it can finish, a heavy boot stomps down hard, crushing the monster into the dirt. The arrogant creature coughs up blood, screaming for help as the tables completely turn. The crushed monster struggles helplessly under his boot. Forced to its knees, the enraged beast screams that it will kill him for this humiliation. But Torn doesn't even give it a chance to strike back. He instantly launches a devastating blur of an attack. The sheer force of the blow tears right through the clearing. Meanwhile, a lone figure in a white coat watches quietly from the misty forest. The dust finally begins to settle over the ruined battlefield. The monstrous ambush has been completely wiped out. The dying creature just lets out a weary sigh, smiling through a mouthful of blood. Turan stands tall over the remains of his enemies. With the battle won, the heavy adrenaline finally starts to fade. He takes a long moment to catch his breath. The eerie silence of the dark woods slowly returns. It is time to regroup and check on the survivors. Later that night, a warm campfire cuts through the pitch-black darkness. Turan finally gets a chance to sit down and rest. He shares the small, quiet camp with the traveler he rescued. They quietly eat their meager rations by the crackling flames. The brutal tension of the day's fight slowly melts away. The stranger watches our hero with deep, unspoken gratitude. He knows exactly how close he came to dying out there. The man gently reaches out to calm his nervous horse. Then he finally breaks the comfortable silence between them. He thanks him for moving him to safety, introducing himself as Assis of Hausberg. Our hero simply replies that his name is Taran. Assis solemnly explains that they never meant to cause any trouble on their peaceful pilgrimage. But in these wild mountains, peace is always the first thing to die. As they lead the horse deeper into the shadowy forest, the adrenaline finally fades. The two travelers find a quiet clearing to set up camp for the night. Resting by the fire, Assis admits he only managed to take down 2 dark elves. He asks how many attackers Turan had to fight off in the chaos. Turan quietly assures him that the threat is completely wiped out. Curious, Asus asks what brings a skilled fighter out onto these dangerous roads. Turan decides to keep his true mission hidden. He simply claims that he is also out here on a pilgrimage. But Asus isn't entirely convinced by the lie. He watches the young shepherd closely, silently analyzing his raw power. A sudden realization hits him like a surge of golden energy. He pictures the devastating elemental clash from the ambush earlier. He knows exactly how much raw strength it takes to kill a shadow wizard. And he realizes Turan simply doesn't have the mana capacity to slay two of them alone. He wonders what someone with such strange lethal abilities is really doing out here by himself. Still, a lifesaver is a lifesaver, so Asus formally thanks Turan for his help. Flashing a wide, unnerving grin, he invites Turan to accompany him back home. He reveals that House Berg are master wizardsmiths serving the great Arabian bloodline. As a reward, Asus promises to forge Turan the most powerful magical artifact imaginable. Turan listens in silence, knowing this unexpected alliance might be exactly what he needs. Turan hesitates to accept the generous offer. He fears that relying on others will keep him from ever truly getting stronger. He believes a true warrior must honor sacrifices by pressing forward on his own. But Asus just smiles, assuring him that accepting a gift is a kindness, not a weakness. Since they are the same age, the blonde wizard suggests they drop the formalities. Turan agrees, and Asus enthusiastically welcomes his new friend for the journey ahead. The two set off through the dense forest together. They eventually make their way out of the shadows and into a bustling town market. Turan takes in the sights, amazed by the sheer variety of goods. As they browse the stalls, he notices something strange about Ace's luggage. He asks why the inside of his travel chest is magically cooled. Asus casually reveals he uses a rare temperature control artifact just to keep his food fresh. Turan is absolutely stunned. Most people never see a single magical item, yet this guy uses priceless enchantments just to stay clean. But Asus waves off the trinkets, swearing to forge Turan a true masterpiece to repay his life. He admits that no item could ever rival Turan's monstrous raw strength anyway. The wizard is still baffled by the sheer number of high-level skills the mountain boy used. He expects a profound explanation of his magical training, but Turan just blinks, casually admitting he doesn't actually know how he does it. He just can. Turan quickly reminds the wizard that he promised not to pry into his bloodline. Asus nervously asks if he's secretly an old man, but Turan reveals he's not even 19. The master smith is absolutely floored. He realizes he should have known the boy was a monster when he crushed those dark elves. Asus mutters that it's insane to have two absolute geniuses in their generation. Turan immediately asks if this other prodigy could forge his artifact, but Asus shakes his head, explaining she belongs to the powerful family he serves. Turan finally puts the pieces together. As they continue their trek through the dense woods, Asus shares more about his noble house. He explains that family heads never just hand their titles down to their own kids. With dozens of heirs born in every generation, it's a brutal meritocracy. There's always a distant relative who grows up stronger than the main bloodline. The true genius Asus mentioned is one of those rare, overwhelming talents. Turan absorbs the heavy family politics, asking if she was even allowed at a recent funeral. Asus nods, confirming her immense status within the house. The two share a quiet understanding as they finally clear the tree line. Their long journey is finally coming to an end. The trees part to reveal the sprawling lands of their destination. They have finally arrived at the heart of the noble territory. Before them stands the breathtaking estate of House Berg in Jabelenning. Inside the grand hall, Asus is immediately swarmed by his worried mother. The 43-year-old master wizard bursts into tears, forcing his family to calm him down. His mother demands to know why his simple pilgrimage turned out so deadly. Asus admits he was ambushed by dark elves, sparking absolute outrage from the nobles. But when it comes to rewarding Turan, the matriarch's gratitude falls completely flat. She coldly refuses to offer the young shepherd any real hospitality. This blatant disrespect instantly infuriates the wizardsmith. Asus demands to know how she can turn away the boy who saved his life. The tense argument echoes across the grand marble steps of the estate. Before it can escalate, Asus is stunned to see a familiar face in the hall. A fierce, dark-haired woman named Misa steps forward with a grim update. She reveals that Jahar assassins tried to kill her days ago, forcing her into hiding. The weight of Misa's revelation hangs heavy in the room. Everyone is stunned that Jahar assassins would dare strike so close to a noble estate. Asus realizes just how dangerous the situation has become for all of them. They agree they need to rest and figure out their next move in the morning. Later that night, an eye suddenly snaps open in the dark. Karen can't sleep, his veteran instinct screaming that something isn't adding up. He quietly slips out of his room and heads down the grand hallways. But he's not the only one. Awake, he runs into Asus, who cheerfully greets him as an early riser. Karn isn't in the mood for small talk. He stares the blonde wizard down, piecing the puzzle together. Asus tries to play it cool, but his enigmatic smile gives him away. The veteran hunter knows a setup when he sees one. He corners Asus, demanding the truth about this whole arrangement. Chiron points out that this estate isn't just a random safe house. He realizes the blonde wizard had a hidden agenda from the very start. The pieces finally click into place. He refuses to let the younger man dodge the question any longer. He bluntly asks if Asus's real motive for bringing them here was tied to Mesa all along. Dropping the act, Asus finally confesses that he and Mesa actually trained together years ago. With a smirk, Asus admits he secretly wants to see the fierce warrior finally break. Out on the Grand Plaza, Mesa suddenly spots them approaching. Shocked to see her old training partner, she demands to know who he brought. Stepping forward, Turan politely introduces himself to the dark-haired woman. Mesa studies the young mountain shepherd closely. After surviving a Jahar assassination attempt, she knows better than to trust strangers. The tension on the balcony is thick enough to cut with a knife, but Turan holds his ground under her intense, evaluating gaze. He might be untrained, but his immense magic makes him fearless. Asus watches the silent standoff, keeping his own motives completely hidden. However, their tense reunion is abruptly cut short. The sky suddenly darkens as a violent lightning storm rolls in overhead. Without warning, a deafening explosion rips through the estate. The massive blast catches everyone completely off guard. Misa reels back in absolute shock. Blinding yellow energy tears through the peaceful courtyard. Dust and heavy debris cloud the air around them. Through the smoke, a shadowy figure looms right behind an exhausted victim. Panting heavily for breath, the mysterious arrival mutters a quiet apology. But a voice immediately challenges the exhausted white-haired man, asking if he can really handle this. He just glares back, his intense focus pushing through the obvious strain. Still reeling from the blast, Mesa quickly apologizes for the chaos. The tension in the grand hall is thick enough to cut with a knife. Asus steps in, pointing out that while Turan has unrivaled mana, his true terrifying power is his ability to instantly master any skill. Misa stares up in absolute shock at the sheer scale of the shepherd's potential. Sensing an opportunity, the blonde wizard pitches a dangerous game. He proposes they each cast an unfamiliar spell, racing to see who can master it first, and asks Mesa if she is in. To keep things fair, he agrees to exclude his own signature magic from the list. The rules are set, but the duel kicks off before anyone can blink. With a sudden swish, a spell slices through the air. Thick yellow vines erupt from the ground. The magical tendrils violently entangle their target, completely trapping them in place. The attacker smugly taunts their victim to hold that pose because it is just too entertaining to watch. But Turan simply looks up at the sky, completely unfazed by the trap. As glowing blue stones illuminate the dark terrain, a massive realization hits him. Channeling his explosive growth, he summons a surge of blue energy and snaps the vines like twigs. Mesa's eyes go wide with disbelief as the shepherd shatters the impossible challenge in seconds. Misa watches in horror as Turan casually admits this is his very first time using magic. Realizing Asus was right about the shepherd's monstrous talent, she finds herself pinned by glowing tendrils. Asus then challenges the fierce assassin to take her turn. Reaching into the tall grass, the master wizard summons a scurrying rat. Misa scoffs at the basic animal control, but Asus coldly states it's just raw material, and terrifying blue energy flares from his eye. He grips the squealing creature, flooding it with a dark aura. The rat crumbles away, leaving behind a horrifying skeletal monster. Misa is speechless as Asus proudly displays his grotesque creation. Refusing to back down, she steps up and snaps her fingers. She summons a mouse and grabs the squealing creature tight. But as she floods it with energy, she struggles to control the magic. She realizes Asus's twisted transformation is impossibly complex. Turan calls the display gross, but Asus just shrugs. Asus smirks, mocking her for failing a spell a noble of House Arabian should easily grasp. He suggests handing the win to Turan, but Mesa furiously screams she isn't finished. She grips the squeaking mouse, furiously channeling her magic to force the transformation. Normally a wizard needs perfect understanding, but Mesa bypasses the rules entirely. She dumps a massive brute force wave of raw mana straight into the creature. Screaming for it to rot, she violently mutates the beast into a charging monster. Asus is genuinely shocked that she actually pulled the spell off. But the victory is short-lived, and a second later, Mesa collapses onto the dirt. The men rush over, but Asus notes this isn't just simple mana exhaustion. Her body was already terrifyingly weak before she even started casting. Scooping her up, Karen is stunned by how dangerously like she is. Mesa finally blinks awake in her bedroom. Finding an anxious elder hovering nearby, He asks if she passed out during training, but Mesa just stares in troubled silence. Her aunts mention keeping him under surveillance, but a crying Mesa insists it isn't his fault. She begs to be left alone, but her aunt gently pleads with her to eat something. With a weary sigh, Mesa thanks her and stares blankly into the bowl. She slowly scoops up the broth and takes a hesitant bite, but she suddenly flinches as horrifying memories of screaming children begging for her help flood her mind. The trauma is too much, and she clutches the sheets in a desperate panic. Meanwhile, deep in Hausberg's basement lies the radiant temple of the limping goddess. A scarred guard named Harem Bird warns his prisoner not to try escaping these ancient walls. The silver-haired man calmly denies any escape plans, but Harem aggressively insists on the temple's strength. Leaning in uncomfortably close, Harem brags so much that his prisoner just gets annoyed. Suddenly, Harem draws his blade and unleashes a lightning-fast strike across the floor. When asked what on earth he is doing, the guard bluntly states he is training and keeps swinging. Watching the scarred guard, the silver-haired man realizes every swing is perfectly efficient. Harem pauses and his prisoner quickly apologizes for staring. He admits he was just admiring the guard's incredible form. Harem scoffs that noblemen rely on magic because their weak bodies cannot handle real combat. The prisoner agrees, admitting his past battles made him wish he had learned swordplay. Hearing this, Harem tosses over a blade and tells him to try it out. When the captive points out he is a suspect, Harem just smirks. He boasts that the prisoner is way too weak to hurt him anyway. But the second the silver-haired man grips the hilt, explosive blue energy erupts. Harem's arrogant words about him being harmless suddenly hang in the air. Gripping the glowing sword, the prisoner decides to give it his all. A massive shockwave of blue aura suddenly erupts from the captive, but Harem furiously screams at him to stop relying on his mana. Guards quickly restrain the unfazed prisoner as the veteran corrects his terrible sword posture. Harem explains that magic is just a parlor trick compared to raw physical strength. He orders him to hone his vessel, proving a trained body can dominate any battlefield. Suddenly, the heavy doors creak open, and Mesa steps inside to bow deeply. She formally apologizes for locking Turin in the temple, but he politely takes the blame. Relieved she recovered from her panic attack, he assures her the confinement was completely necessary. Getting to business, Mesa demands to know how he decomposed that rat without a bloodline ability. Turin smirks and refuses to spill his magical secrets for free. Desperate, she offers a secret family technique in trade, and Turin happily accepts the deal. Mesa realizes Turin used invisible microorganisms to rot the rat, admitting defeat since she had to waste mana to mimic his spell. She begs him to tell Asus the duel was a tie to save her pride. To pay her debt, she pulls out a comb and dramatically reveals her family's secret technique, static electricity. But Turin already knows exactly what that is, leaving her completely stunned. Panicking over wasting a trade secret, she insists they keep training together every sunset until she finds knowledge he actually needs. Later, Turin sits down to a feast so lavish it lives fit for a king. Asus's mother formally offers Turin a magical artifact for saving her son, and Turin requests something to block ambushes. The matriarch admits they don't have one ready, but Asus immediately steps up and volunteers to forge it himself. Asus explains he will imbue a portable accessory with the Guardian Bloodline's defensive powers. He promises to finish it within a month, welcoming Turin as their guest until then. But Asus also warns that his mother, the matriarch, now has her sights set on him. Asus had boasted about Turian's strength to ensure she wouldn't look down on a wandering noble. Now she plans to shower him with gifts to lure him into marrying into the family. Before Turin can stress over it, Asus cheerfully drags him out to explore the town. They hit up a local casino and stroll through the bustling marketplace. But suddenly, Turin freezes in his tracks. Staring at a wall of wanted posters, he spots a massive bounty on his old mentor, Cairn. But Cairn isn't just a wanted man's. He's the star of a wildly popular stage play. Asus asks how he liked the show, but Turin just laughs at the heroic portrayal. The next morning, Turin wakes up to find the scarred guard, Harem, looming over his bed. Harem declares that his vessel has potential and immediately drags him out to train. Asus suddenly bursts into the room but completely freezes the second he spots his terrifying uncle. When Harem invites his nephew to join them, Asus makes a panicked excuse and sprints away. Turin wonders why his friend is so terrified, but he quickly finds out the hard way. Harem puts him through an absolute nightmare workout, screaming at him to push past the agony. Harem finally calls it quits, leaving Turin gasping on the floor. The guard says Turin should be grateful his wizard mana will maintain his muscles. Turin tries to confess he isn't actually a wizard, but Harem just flashes a terrifying grin. Instead, he drags the exhausted kid straight into brutal martial arts training. This becomes his new routine, surviving Harem's heavy gravity combat drills all morning. Then, he practices magic with Misa until sunset. 3 weeks fly by, but Torin still struggles to spark his lightning. Misa is no help, claiming she just points and shoots thanks to her Arabian bloodline. Suddenly, a messenger rushes in, interrupting him to ask who Tehran is. Mesa fiercely shuts the man down, demanding to know why he ignored her orders for privacy. But her annoyance peaks when the messenger reveals that Lord Arabian has officially summoned her. The messenger warns that dark elves are invading the south. With 3 cities already conquered, Lord Arabian is assembling a vanguard. Turan realizes the monstrous threat has finally arrived.